Hello, Augies Worldwide. I'm Dave Kassler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with another episode of Ask Dave. Today we're going to be talking about hearing, as in hearing. And the question comes from Tom Quinn, W5TEQ. And he says, hearing-related question. Hi, Dave. I'm getting back on the air after a 10-year break. Rig is a K2 into a half-wave end-fed on 20 and 40 meters. As a guy in my mid-80s, my hearing is very compromised, so I find it almost impossible to understand single sideband. I see DSP, that's digital signal processing, processors offered, but before I spend $200, I wonder what real-life experiences people have with these items. Also, any resources for hams with compromised hearing would be appreciated. Thanks, in 73. Well, Tom, sorry to hear about your hearing problems. Let's talk a little bit about, first of all, just communications versus hearing. This may answer part of your question. Human hearing goes from near 0 hertz, or about 20 hertz, up to 20K hertz. Now, very few people hear above 15K. The Bell Telephone Company, the Bell Labs, put a lot of work during those first years of television into understanding the spectrum requirements of human hearing. They wanted the bandwidth on their telephone systems to be the minimum necessary so that you could, 1, understand what the other person says, and 2, recognize the voice. Okay? And here's what they came up with. Instead of starting at 20 hertz and ending at 15 hertz, they developed what they call the A-weighted. And you, by the way, can find this in Wikipedia. This is a curve called sound pressure level. Now, sound waves are longitudinal waves in air, okay? Longitudinal waves in air. It's like a push-pull, and they go up above 20 kilohertz is considered ultrasonic. And so it starts out around 20, but really the human hearing starts out a little above that and comes up kind of slowly, comes up slightly above, and then comes down like this. Okay? Now, the problem that they had was they couldn't put 15 kilohertz circuits in anywhere. It would just take up way too much equipment. So they decided that the communications bandwidth for a local phone call would start at 300 hertz. Notice how much of that eliminates. That's down here, the bass part of the voice, the part of the voice that is sort of the in the basement, holds up the rest of the structure. And they decided that instead of 15K, they'd go to 4,000 kilohertz. Okay, this is called local grade telephone. From 300 hertz to 4 kilohertz. Now, when it came time to go ahead and make long distance calls, they cut this. They cut this at the top at 3 kilohertz. So from 30 to 300 kilohertz is called toll grade. Now, you can see the history here. Toll means long distance, okay? That you're going to pay for that. And this is what you get, 30 to 300. This is why if you're of a certain age, you can remember the old system that Bell Telephone had, where you would dial the long distance number, and there'd be lots of clicks and clacks, and you'd hear finally the person come on the line, and they sounded a little hollow and not as high fidelity. So toll grade is not as high fidelity as local grade. Local grade can be very good, by the way. In fact, if you go back in the old Stroger systems, there is no physical limit on the bandwidth, and those circuits actually can sound very, very good. But the toll grade is 300 to 3,000. Now look at all the hearing that's leaving out. These are all your sibilants. The S's and T's and scratches and so much like that. So I'll write down here sibilants. And of course it's leaving out the bass. Now it's interesting to note, starting at 300 here, right here at about 256-ish, is middle C. So all the bass is gone. Now, the harmonics of the bass are not gone, but all the bass is gone. So from about middle C up to 3,000, okay. And this is where, when they started putting single sideband together, they put single sideband together here. They used that bandwidth because it was a standard bandwidth for the transmission of human voice over toll grade circuits. Take a moment out to get something to drink. Now, that means if you're an older person and your hearing is starting to go, what usually goes is from the top down. You start losing hearing in the top part. My hearing, for example, stops at 8K. Now that's still, I can still enjoy music and things like that at 8K, but the real high pitch stuff is lost on me. There are notes on my organ I cannot hear. And my wife will come by and say, "Oh, stop that screeching." She can hear it just fine. I can't hear it at all. So that's because of mine. Now, I was in the Air Force, but I was not subjected to loud jet aircraft, so I don't have that problem. Now, this is just one way that hearing can get messed up. You lose your high frequencies. You could lose your low frequencies. The way the human ear works, in the inner ear, there's I think it's the cochlea, and it's got little hairs. Now, it's got a viscous medium in here, so sound travels. The speed of sound is much lower in here than it is, and these hairs get longer around here. And an individual hair, actually several hairs nearby, will vibrate slightly when you hear a pure tone. And your ear is very, very, very good at determining tone. And you get these combinations of tones in real time that give you the sense of hearing. Now, because of the way this thing is set up, it's not real sensitive to phase. So if this is wiggling and this is wiggling and one is a harmonic of the other and they're out of phase, you won't hear that. Now, people who have trained their hearing, musicians and so on, can hear the difference in phase. And so they will be able to tell that. I did an experiment on that in an earlier video where I played two tones that were changing in phase. And some people said they could tell a difference. A lot of others said they couldn't. Most people can't without training. So what can go wrong with hearing? Well, you can have problems in here, okay, to where some of these are no longer active. There are people who have a little shaved head right here, and what they've done down in the cochlea is put an insert in the cochlea so that it can stimulate the cochlea directly. Now, the problem with this is if the cochlea tends, this method, you don't hear the lows so much. So if your hearing is, say, in here, you'll hear the part of the voice spectrum that allows the letters and so on to be distinguished one from another, okay? And the problem is that if you're up here, because this doesn't do real well with the low frequencies, if you're up here past 3K mostly, you won't get the right frequencies over single sideband in order to make that work. So I would suggest consulting with your hearing doctor and talking to him about this 3,000 to 300 hertz slice here and see if that can make sense for you. Now there are other things that can go wrong that can cause any kind of some sort of a bad curve in your hearing right here, which again, this is the part that's from single sideband. This stuff up here, which is an important part of speech, music, and so on. Have you ever noticed how music sounds terrible over the telephone? You know, music on hold, stuff like that. That's because of this toll quality problem that we have right here. Okay, so there you have it. This is an approach. I'm not going to say that this is Tom's approach or Tom's problem, but this is a problem that many people have with their hearing. My hearing already has been attenuated down to about 8,000 hertz. Okay, and so I'm not picking up this stuff up here. When I was a kid, I could hear up here, and I could hear the TV flyback transformers because they would make a repetitive sound every, well, it'd be about 15 kilohertz. It was the thing that caused the dot on the television to fly back to the beginning of the line, start a new line, fly back to the beginning of the line, start a new line, and so on. I could actually hear that. Not anymore. Not anymore. I haven't in years. Okay, I hope this helps. I hope this helps. So there you have it. If you would like to help support this channel, you may do so by going to dcasler.com/support and picking the ways that you find most helpful. Please also subscribe and click the bell and click like. Don't forget to comment. Until we next meet, 73.